The US and Russia are reportedly trying to hammer out a Ukraine peace deal, though there seems to be just one tiny missing piece to the deal, namely Ukraine. I'm Paul, US Army combat veteran. Let's talk about this, and is it more Russia cope or real progress towards peace? Okay, so the Kremlin says that Ukraine's stance is unchanged. It says its Ukraine stance is unchanged after reports of back-channel talks with the US. By back-channel, of course, this is not a back channel, by the way. Steve Witkoff, a presidentially appointed special advisor, and Kirill Dmitriev, that's not a back channel. That's just a channel, okay? Again, back channel usually means unofficial individuals meeting to discuss a potential official deal. So, reportedly, the two met, Witkoff and Kirill Dmitriev, trying to hammer out what to do in Ukraine, as though somehow the past 15 meetings and 6 phone calls have been just a problem of communication errors and not fundamentally incompatible positions. Dmitriev said, quote, "We feel the Russian position is really being heard," which, as you might recall, the last time Steve Witkoff went and met with Putin, he didn't bring State Department translators. And Trump later admitted Witkoff didn't do any research on Russia. He didn't even want to be involved, but Trump just sort of forced him to go there. And then he came back and repeated a bunch of insane Russian talking points. Like, for example, that occupied Crimea had a free and fair referendum held by literal occupation authorities and was like, well, you know, they wrote it into their constitution. Just absurd shit, as though Ukraine's constitution doesn't also say where its borders are. Now, this kind of insane stuff is reportedly part of a 28-point proposal to end the war, something Trump has been unable to do so. And there's not really any details of this 28-point plan, except that it covers 4 major areas: peace in Ukraine, security guarantees, European security, and future U.S. relations with Russia and Ukraine, which is, of course, really unhelpfully broad stuff, given that all of these things are also each other. Peace in Ukraine, security guarantees, something that is essential to peace in Ukraine, according to Zelensky and the Europeans. European security, which, of course, the Europeans say their primary security threat is Russia, something that, again, you might recall, Russia has staged not just a hybrid campaign of sabotage against European and NATO countries, and has faced no consequences for it from any NATO country, but also has literally attacked these countries with combat drones and aircraft airspace violations. So again, European security, Russia's take on that, really pretty brilliant. And of course, U.S. relations with Russia and Ukraine, which is just, of course, there's always a relationship between Russia and Ukraine and the U.S. It's absurd. It's a joke. Now, Axios said the White House believes it may be able to bring Kiev and European allies on board with a new plan, expects the plan to be revised based on their input. An unnamed Ukrainian official quoted as saying, "We know the Americans are working on something." Now, again, this is reportedly, though, Zelensky is not a fan of some of the stances here, and it's easy to see why. According to, again, the Mirror, Zelensky, there's a lot of terms in here that are just simply non-starters for Ukraine and are fairly obvious gimmies to Russia, right? The proposal is said to include having Ukraine's army, forfeiting the Donbas, giving up key weaponry. Now, I want to point out, guys, that as we've talked about on this channel, if Russia has no designs on invading Ukraine, and we've shown pretty decisively, Ukraine cannot really meaningfully pose a threat to Russian territory, right? Why is the size of the Ukrainian army really important? Why does Russia need a decisive military advantage when it already enjoys one? Does that make sense? What threat to Russia could Ukraine pose? The only answer is, of course, that a defensive army in Ukraine is only like having a lock on the door. And it's the equivalent of negotiating with a burglar who broke into your house, where the burglar says, yes. I'll leave only with the things I've already put in my bag. But you can't ever lock your doors again. You go, hey, man, you're obviously going to steal from me again. He goes, no, I promise. I promise not to steal from you again. But you can never lock your doors again. You go, well, what do you mean? You're gonna unlock your doors, right? So I can steal from you? He goes, no, that's unfair. That's not fair, right? It's a joke. Same with giving up key weaponry. It's comical, right? Again, there's also stances about discussions about Ukrainian neutrality, but the problem with Ukrainian neutrality is that, one, what that implies is that Ukraine loses the ability to make its decisions about its future. And it also implies that Russia, the Russian Federation, gets a veto on any international treaty, right? Because neutrality, who gets to decide if a treaty is neutral, violates Ukrainian neutrality or not? And because Russia, right, Ukraine might say, well, we're not going to join NATO, but we're going to sign a security agreement with our key European partners that is NATO-like in nature. Well, technically that doesn't violate the treaty, right? But Russia's going to say, well, that's not neutral, right? And so who gets to decide if an agreement is neutral? The answer is nobody. The answer is it's another Russian joke. They want a veto over Ukrainian diplomatic actions. So this is going to be a non-starter, but what's going to happen is Trump is going to use this as an excuse to provide less aid to Ukraine. He's going to say, well, we negotiated this great deal. Ukraine doesn't want it. It's their fault, which is stupid for a variety of reasons. Again, because Ukraine has offered their own great deal and compromised on many things that were uncompromisable, and Russia has refused to take it. In fact, Ukraine has repeatedly offered, hey, let's just stop the fighting now and just talk. Ukraine has said, just stop fighting. We can just stop fighting. We can just stop. It doesn't mean you get permanently keep all your stuff. We can just talk. That offer has been on the table for months, and Russia has continually declined it again. And the fact that Russia can get these meetings, can get these peace proposals, can keep the Americans fully, totally locked in, engaged, despite obvious Russian trolling. I don't know what else to call it. Trolling, attacks really on Europeans is insane. Like, we just talked about the fact that FSB agents bombed a major rail line inside Poland, a NATO country. And yet somehow that it just doesn't affect the U.S. at all. The U.S. does not view that as a signal of Russian ill intent. They're just like, well, accidents happen. The FSB, I mean, who knows? It's absurd. The whole thing it would be comical if it wasn't life and death. Anyway, guys, if you want to support the channel, become a member at combatvetnews.com. We just took a look at a new weapon deployed on the front lines. That's only for members, of course. And if you want to help out, you can become a member either on Combat Vet News or just click that link down below, the old Become a Member button. Select a specialist tier and above, and YouTube will get a login to Combat Vet News. Thanks to our members, guys like Alfred Chesky, Alan Knutson, Christine Schumann, Dan M., Deborah Oppenheimer, and all of our Lieutenant Tier members. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.